Watch this. So that video that you saw was my room when I stayed at Father Joe's Village in San Diego, California. So the context of this video is a video that I recorded so that you can visualize better what I will explain to you later, so you have a visual idea of what it is. So when I opened the door, you saw the first bed and then you saw the window. That's where I used to sleep. Now, I used to come to shit like this every day. Now, I'm gonna speak to you about how I was convinced that they could hear my thoughts. Also, I'm gonna explain to you about the conditioning. So while this was happening, I was being conditioned for the sex thoughts at work, where they would bang loudly whenever there was a word that they wanted to sensitize me to. So all of this stuff is cumulative, all right? So it just keeps adding and adding layers of manipulation to your head. So this delusion has everything to do with auditory hallucinations. Now, auditory hallucinations are insidious. They're very insidious, so they are very hard to detect. The worst part is that your outside environment has a very direct influence on these hallucinations. In this video, I will tell the story about how these hallucinations really convinced me with all my volition that everyone could hear my thoughts. So this happened when I still thought that they had direct energy weapons. Keep this in mind, for it contextualizes my assumptions. Now, I was on the bed closest to the window, and during this time, I began hearing a lot of chattering outside of the window. But then when I went out and looked there was hardly anyone. There was like one or two people. So what I heard outside was very inconsistent with the amount of chatter. I mean, what I heard outside was very inconsistent with the amount of people that I saw outside. So it sounded like there were like tens of people there. So then I began paying attention to the voices, and I noticed that they were in loops. That, really was trippy. So then I kept paying attention to one of those different voices, and I noticed that one of them were my thoughts. So what I was thinking, I was hearing outside of that window, and there was like a 1 second delay on it. So I went outside, and then I saw that one guy had his back against one of the windows, but he was looking at something. I am nearsighted, so from far away things seem blurry. I can drive, I can do everything, but it is blurry from a distance. So then the voice was coming from that one guy that I saw holding something on his hands, and I assumed that it was a speaker that was broadcasting my thoughts to everyone in the homeless shelter. I mean, I literally kept hearing my thoughts with a 1 second delay outside. So during this time, I already mentioned earlier that I was being sensitized to sex. So this happened so much that whenever I had a dirty thought, remember, I am already having auditory hallucinations of people. I'm hearing my thoughts outside, right? So now the fact that I heard a bang whenever I had a dirty thought made my brain expect a bang whenever I had a thought. So by this time, I was already convinced that everyone was hearing what I was thinking. Now, a lot of the hallucinations are what you expect. So you know when you have an expectation of someone saying something and you think it in your head right before they actually say it. So I expected to hear a bang. So guess what? I hallucinated a bang whenever I had a nasty thought. And here's the kicker. Remember, auditory hallucinations have localization properties. So I could hear it on the wall. And not only that, but I even felt the vibration from the bang of the wall that I heard. You know, when someone is driving an engine and you feel the vibration, so the auditory hallucinations even produce the vibration. So I was convinced that they were in my head, that someone in the wall, that they could hear what I was thinking, because from somewhere I was hearing a bang. So that was the evidence that I needed to assume that they could hear what I was thinking. So it is all an auditory hallucination. And I was conditioned to expect a bang whenever I had a nasty thought. That's how that works. Now, during this time, I speak three languages: English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And there's this one thing that you do when you're a kid, when you put F's everywhere. So, for example, if you want to say hello, you say "Hefelo fofu." You know, so that's how you mix up. So I am here having my thoughts, believing that everyone can hear them. So guess what? I began using those three languages and I began mixing them up and using the F language with English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So I am exhausting my mind figuring out of ways of thinking that wouldn't be understood by anyone else. And this is the kicker. Since I was so certain that that was true, the confirmation bias, you know that. So I was looking for reasons to assume that that was true. So I was conditioned to hear a bang whenever I had a nasty thought. So with the auditory hallucinations, they produced the bang on the wall, including the vibrations. So you feel like your mind is not yours anymore. And like you are literally in this mental cage where you are not allowed to have your own thoughts. And yeah, so that's how the illusion of the gang stalking related illusion of them hearing what you're thinking is produced. It's not because they can hear you. They can't. But it is because you are having these auditory hallucinations that produce that sensation, because your brain is producing these auditory hallucinations. So when you're having them, you are hearing the evidence that it's real, but it's not. They cannot hear what you're thinking. It is just an auditory hallucination. And the bangs when you have a nasty thought, it conditions you to have an expectation, and that kind of builds up on the auditory hallucinations. So your mind begins producing the bangs by itself. That's how that works. They cannot hear what you're thinking. They can't see what you're thinking. But let me tell you, for a while, I was convinced that they could see what I was thinking. But that's material for another video. All right. So again, this is my first try at trying to explaining this to you. If you need more context, check out the video on auditory hallucinations. And yeah, now you know why people who get gang stalked believe that that gang stalkers can actually hear what they're thinking. It's because they have these auditory hallucinations and of people who are of their own thoughts outside of them. And not only that, so when gangstalkers see you looking outside and turning because you hear something, it's kind of obvious. They can read your body. Remember, they have been watching me for years now. So whenever I start looking around to see where that sound is coming from, and they see me tripping out, they are going to start feeding that narrative that you are hearing things. They are starting to feed the narrative that they are hearing you. And not only that, if you have the expectation of them hearing you, guess what? Your mind is going to produce an answer sometimes with their voice. It's freaking insane. That's why it feels so real. Because your mind, you have the expectation of something, and the auditory hallucinations are creating this perception. All right? So this is the first time that I'm trying to explain this to you. If it doesn't make sense, please message me, comment on it, whatever it is, so I can clarify it. I will sometime later, when I have more experience explaining these mental perception fuck-ups to you, I will be able to vocalize it clearly or more clear. Oh man, I have so many things to talk about. It's insane. All right. Thank you for watching. Bye.